Welcome into the latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined in the studio today by very cheery, very
you're
happy.
on edge. You're on edge for some reason.
Well, because I know what mood you're in today.
I was in okay mood. I came in and somebody was sat at my desk and made a mess, and my little bit of OCD has come out, and it's made me slightly on edge. That should wear off as the show goes on.
Well, let's hope so.
I think.
We spent a lot of time at this desk last year talking about the possibility of Liverpool completing the quadruple. Obviously, they came up short in the end, losing out to Manchester City in the league and Real Madrid in the Champions League final. They're, of course, now looking ahead to next season. Mark Ogden is with them at pre-season, and he caught up with Jurgen Klopp to reflect on what happened last year.
So Jurgen, how do you reflect on last season? You came so close, but you won 2 trophies. So what's your initial reflection on the way the season ended?
Very positive about the season, about the things we did. Of course, when you're that close, it would have been nice, but it doesn't hurt anymore or whatever. It hurt in the moment, clear, when we came a bit short in the league and then lost the Champions League final. But honestly, the next day, showed us everything we needed to know. The people obviously, and that's what we do, what we are doing. We do it for the people, and the people obviously appreciate a lot what we did over the year. It was a spectacular season with insane amount of points, insane amount of games, all these kind of things. So very, very, very positive reflection. It's all good, and we are here, recharged and ready to go again.
Crash it on the pitch now. There's been change at the club. Sadio's left. Mo signed a contract, but you've brought in Luis Diaz in January, Darwin Nunes. There's an evolution going on right now.
Yeah, necessary as well. So we didn't lose only Sadio, we lost Divock Origi as well, we lost Taki Minamino just from the playing squad last year. Some other players might leave as well, so we will see that exactly. But we brought in, yes, Luis in the winter, Darwin now, Fabio now, Calvin now, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting because the boys are fresh, are full of excitement, big eyes, being together with us. So it just changed the dynamic in the group, and I think that's really necessary. I'm now in my 7th season here, so it's important that we just do the same thing again. We have to push ourselves to the next level, and for that you always need a new input, and that's what we got.
And how important was it that Mo signed his contract? And
yeah, very, very important, of course. It's always like this. If it wouldn't have happened, we would have had to deal with that. But I knew early that Mo's wish was to stay. The club wanted him to stay. And then it's just negotiations. And if you do that in other parts of business out there, nobody is aware of it. You just realize the moment when they're still together. But in football, we all do that in public. And that's why it felt, I think, for people a bit nervy, but it was never for us. So very important signing for us. I always see it like this: if we would have to sign him now from another club, wow, what a player we would get. And now we have him still here, absolutely great. And when you see him here now, he's really happy and he's buzzing about the future with us. And great news.
Do you just see anybody but Man City being your direct challengers? Do you see a team emerging that can challenge you two, because you are so far ahead, or you appear to be?
They're not that far ahead. I mean, that's always a bit of misunderstanding of the points tally you get last season. But we played Chelsea. I don't know how many points more we had as Chelsea. I really don't know. But when we played them, we didn't win one game against them. And that's not because we were bad that day. No, we were really good in these games. You have to look at Tottenham, what they are doing now in the moment. They were good last year, and they didn't get worse this year. Arsenal is still there. Man United, obviously, with a new start, these kind of things. So it's always the same. And we changed a little bit, not too much, but City changed more. I don't know. We will see what happens in the next few weeks. But that's how it is. And the basis has to be right. And that's what is right for us. And from there we can go. And I'm not interested in the points we got last year. I'm only interested in the points we can get this season. And I'm positive, really positive about it, really optimistic. But I'm not sure. So we will have to fight. And we will see what the outcome is.
Jurgen Klopp there, speaking exclusively to Mark Ogden. Nathan Manu and Stevie Nicol joined the conversation. Stevie, what stood out from what you heard there?
Nothing.
Good.
The guys,
all right
the
then.
guys
Elsewhere
absolutely.
today.
I'll see you tomorrow, yeah? See you tomorrow.
Well, it's the same. It's the same stuff he's been coming out with for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's the right stuff. He reminded me of our old coach Ronnie Moran at the start of every season. The one thing he said was, "You get nothing for what you did last year, regardless." And it's kind of the same message from Klopp. He's talking about adding to the squad, which the best teams do. They add a couple of players all the time. You see City doing it as well. And they keep ticking over, and they do keep evolving, and that's the way to stay at the top. You can't keep a squad of 15 together for 7 or 8 years without adding to it, because all of a sudden everybody is falling by the wayside at one time. So you're adding all the time, and they're going about it the right way, and Klopp sounds like old school Liverpool. You don't get anything for what you did last year. You got to start again.
Yeah, I think just keeping the squad on his toes, he's acutely aware that the squad was even after 2 or 3 years of his tenure, it was a little threadbare coming off the bench, which he remedied, and he continues to try and strengthen that department. He talked about, Shaqiri had gone, now it's Minamino and Origi, who obviously played a big part, particularly Origi. And he's brought in, it wasn't much money from young Carvalho from Fulham, and obviously Calvin Ramsey from Rangers there, certainly for the future. And it's going to be interesting to see how Darwin Núñez goes. But I think, about making sure nobody's resting on the laurels. And I think the other thing I took away from it was dealing with something that one or two wanted to paint as a disaster last year was the end of the season. Oh, it's a disaster.
Right.
Oh, Liverpool. No, you have to be in it to win it. The fact that you didn't go over the line, or you should have won the Champions League final because you outplayed Real Madrid, but they maybe just outfoxed you a little bit, you weren't clinical enough, is a realisation that doesn't make it a terrible season, because they were in 4 trophies to win 4 trophies. The league was the one that was a little bit of an outlier, because they were so far behind at one point and Man City were so much in control. The fact it went as deep as it did was a bonus for Liverpool. But I think the one that did hurt at the time was certainly the Champions League. But I think he's put that in perspective, and as Stevie said, they move on to this year's challenge.
From City's perspective, Nedum, are they expecting more or less of a challenge from Liverpool this season?
I think for City, they've made a couple of changes themselves, and I think Klopp was right there in terms of saying, change has happened, and even the matchups that he mentioned in terms of those 3 games against Chelsea, they won 2 games through penalties, but they weren't able to beat them through 90 minutes. So some of those teams that maybe were 10, 20 points away in the league, that's a consistency thing, but they do have the ability to be able to win some of those games. So I think for Liverpool, for City, they know that they have to keep getting better. I think if you try and stay the same going into the next season, I think you end up just falling behind. So to see the players that have been brought in by both clubs, the youth in terms of, whether it's like Nunes or whether it's Alvarez for Man City and so on, you're almost trying to future-proof, because the players aren't getting younger, but you can keep getting better. So even though the standard is as high as it is, fair play to them for thinking about the future and thinking we have to try and find ways to get better. And I need to give a mention actually to Mark Ogden, please, if possible, because I was so impressed by the fact that he sat down with Jurgen Klopp and just said Mo and Sadio instead of like Mane and Salah. He must be so comfortable in his own skin to be calling them on first name basis. Like, yeah, these are my guys, Mo, Sadio, it must be great for you. Fair play to him for that. That's pretty incredible.
You hate first names.
Well, I do so, Thomas. I think he's been very nice to the other coaches in terms of there is a gap. He's not going to say it.
Right.
Because that's only going to give you potential egg on your face. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, the rest are slacking a bit, which they're not. I mean, Chelsea should financially, and where they've been over the last couple of years with the squad, they should be the closest. But you have to say, I don't think anybody's bridged the gap, but certainly Arsenal and Tottenham so far have spent well on the face of it, and look as if they have improved their own squads. Now, improving your squad and bridging what an almost 20-point gap is a completely different kettle of fish. And Jurgen Klopp talked about these tough games against Chelsea, and he talked about how good Spurs were. Well, he wasn't saying that at the time. He was pretty much saying, this is an awful way to play, this is very frustrating. But what Liverpool and City did better than anybody, they bludgeoned everybody else in the league, and it's that consistency thing. Those two had it, but I bet he wishes, for all it's great to pit yourself against the best, I bet he just thinks, because if Guardiola wasn't at City, I would think Liverpool would be favourites for the league. It's tight, but without him, I think Liverpool would be favourites. And he must sit there thinking sometimes, I've built this unbelievable squad at Liverpool. We've turned this club around. The points that we're getting, any other league would be winning leagues, but they have a great squad and a great manager too. It has to be frustrating.
Stevie, what's the biggest concern from a Liverpool perspective going into the new season?
Ooh. I would think Liverpool's only concern is Manchester City, to be honest. You know, I don't think Klopp can complain about the squad he's got. I don't think he can complain about the signings he's made. You know, the truth is that right now, certainly when the last ball was kicked at the end of last season, City were the better side. And they've added Haaland in particular, and Calvin Phillips. So I think Liverpool's only worry is going to be City. You know, Klopp has been very nice to everybody else, but the truth is he's not sitting going, well, if we finish above Spurs, then we'll win the league, or if we finish above Chelsea, we'll win the league. No, he knows. He knows the team that he's got his sights on, and it's Manchester City, and they have to start well. They can't, you know, they can't afford to get themselves in a position the way they did last year, where they're 10, 12 points behind and looking out of the title race and fighting their way back, and everybody's saying, oh, well done. You can't do that. If you want to win the Premier League title, you start at the beginning and you keep it together all the way through. So that's his only concern, is Manchester City, and can they keep it going from the first whistle to the last.
I think one of his concerns would have to be, and I don't think, obviously, it doesn't look... Oh, we're moving on. Right, OK.
Ten Hag was asked about who he would be as captain, and Harry Maguire is the captain. I have to get to know all the players, but he's an established captain and he's achieved a lot of success. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow.
You get the custard pie off your face.
Which bit's success? What's the success bit?
So that's certainly...
Let me just get... I was going to mention Liverpool, but I was rudely interrupted. What was the Harry Maguire thing again?
He's going to be the captain.
Fed up looking at his face.
He's an established captain. He's achieved a lot of success.
I think Ten Hag needs... I honestly think he needs to answer these questions, and there's going to be lots of them, in a little bit more of a cute manner, a bit more clever. Because you can't be saying at the moment, definitely captain, he is my captain, he is a leader, he has done it. You don't know. We're weeks away from the season started. He was a disaster last year for club, right? And he was smarting from the criticism. He couldn't handle it. And none of us like criticism, but guess what? You're at Man United, you're playing poorly. The club have been in shambles, you're outside the top four. It's coming, and it's coming in waves. And I think at the moment to come out and say, yeah, this is what's happening and he's the leader and that, and then you have to change that.
Yeah.
If he continues the way it's been going, and he might not, you know, you don't have to go down that pathway and it's a one-way street and you've sort of cornered yourself in at this moment in time. You've got to give yourself a bit of wiggle room before you have to go back and say, I know I talked to the press, but because that's just another problem in the dressing room. So he could just have said, look, we're still working on things.
Right.
We're still building the squad. I'm still figuring this out. We're in pre-season. I just think it's a bit early to be talking about a guy being captain who was awful last year. Stevie?
How many times have I said, when you're the coach and you're sat in a press conference, you don't answer anybody's question. You don't. You tell them what you want them to know. You don't answer questions. You don't be open and honest. I mean, he's shown a little bit of naivety here, be answering questions like that openly and honestly. He's got no obligation to tell them anything other than just whatever he fancies telling them. Keep your cards close to your chest, tell them nothing, get through your press conference and move on. Because all they're doing is they're just loading their guns with ammo. So 3 games into the season, it'll be, well, why did you make Harry Maguire captain when you knew he was rubbish last year at being a captain and blah, blah, blah. I'm sick of saying it. Keep your mouth closed. Get through your press conference. Tell them nothing. Because it's easy. It's easy. Somebody's going to have a word in his ear. Because it's going to come back and bite
Listen,
him.
we've got you a ticket to fly out there on the tour. No, Ronaldo can't be there, but you can be there
honestly.
to tell him how to handle the media.
And it's like I said, tell them what you want them to know, not what they want to know. And if you stick by that, you'll be fine.
Stevie Nichols. Stevie Nichols media classes.
I like it. Stevie,
LLC.
Stevie in Thailand would be a great Netflix special. Nathan, looking at it, does it actually make a difference who's captain?
I think it does. Especially given the sort of history that United have had now. Because as we're alluding to there, Harry Maguire had a particularly tough season for the club last season, and there was a lot of criticism levelled at him. So for a manager to fully back him from the get-go, there are immediately questions being asked. Like, that's why they asked him that question. Is he going to be your captain next year? Because they know the situation that just came. And also with Ronaldo being there, for now at least, the wonder was, would it be someone like him? But I think really the bigger question for me is, if it's not going to be Maguire, then who are the other sort of like captain sort of figures that exist within that squad? And if it's a case of, well, he doesn't know anybody better right now and there's nobody who hasn't come in yet, then what we're thinking about Manchester United, because, Harry Maguire has been relatively successful for United across the years and he has done well for them through some period, just not last year. But who would replace him? Do they have 2 or 3 candidates? And I think in some ways, you could argue that's sort of an indictment on the sort of squad setup that they have right now, because there are people who probably aspire to be that. But if Harry Maguire is still the number one candidate right now, then clearly, maybe something needs to be changed.
But Nate, couldn't you just give it to like De Gea? Boom, done, now that's done. De Gea's fine. He's going to play every game. You know what you're going to get from him. And that kind of just takes all this fire away from Harry Maguire.
Well, it doesn't really, because now questions will be asked to Harry Maguire all the time. How do you feel about losing the captaincy? That storm in itself is something that maybe he's trying to avoid. And, I agree with what Stevie's saying. Like, some of these press conferences, people have got their question lined up. They've been preparing it all day to try and catch you out and make you say something sensational. Well, just say nothing. With the Maguire situation, say we're reviewing it, we'll see. Like the bit where he said he's getting to know his players, that's great. But then say, he's my captain, but I'm getting to know my players. Like, what do you want? And as I say, you could give it to De Gea right now. But then, as I said, everyone will be talking about, why is Harry Maguire not the captain anymore? Is it because you don't think he's good enough? And before you know it, Harry Maguire's being linked with a move away from Man United. There's discontent, blah, blah, blah. And then we're in this whole sort of like circus again where Manchester United then end up being the laughing stock in the news cycle. So, it's a strange position for them to be in, a strange quote for him to put out, because in some ways, as Stevie said, did he need to say it?
Just say I go back to it. Just say you're evaluating the squad. Nobody cares, right?
But you always say, like, it doesn't really matter who the captain is anyway.
Well, I think at a big club it's important to have a leader. They've always had it at United, and they had it at Chelsea with John Terry for years. They've had leaders at Liverpool. They've always had leaders going back to, obviously Brian Robson, Steve Bruce, Roy Keane. The list goes on. Let's get a sensible head on here, for God's sake. Harry Maguire, trust me, has got way more to worry about at this football club than whether he's the captain of it or not. He's got to worry about whether he's playing in the starting 11. Because at times he wasn't last year. He was dropped. All right, Ranić was a bit of a joke, but so was he. And I'll give it to you, he's played well for England. And Southgate trusts him. But we're not talking about England, we're talking about Man United. And if I was advising Harry Maguire, I'd say, forget anything about captaincy. You need to worry about what you're producing on the field. You need to play in the manner in which you did for Leicester City that made Man City and Man United chase you. Both these clubs chased him. United were prepared to pay more money and City will not. But they both chased him. And they chased him because he was playing well at the time. And I think that's the important thing for a player. And I think the captaincy is, and if he's worried about the captaincy, then he's stuffed. Right. Because he hasn't got his priorities right. His priorities are the way he's played for United. If it continues, Erik Ten Hag will drop him. And that's why at this moment in time he shouldn't be talking. It could be Lindelof and Varane. Right. It could be anybody. He might put Scott McTominay back there because he's desperate. You just don't know. And so I just feel at this moment in time there is nobody in that United team you should be talking about as captain, he should blow these questions away and say, I'm evaluating this, and from Harry Maguire's perspective, he's got way more things to worry about than whether he's pulling the armband on. He's got to worry about getting on that field.
To that point, Stevie, how do you deal with Maguire if you're Ten Hag?
Well, as far as pre-season's concerned, you really, again, I wish I hadn't said right now he's my captain, blah, blah, blah. Really what you're doing if you're Ten Hag is you're evaluating everybody. And you're evaluating Harry Maguire in particular, how he's playing. Is he sharp? Is he fit? Is he confident? Does he look as though he's got the worry of Manchester on his shoulders? These are the things that Ten Hag needs to do in pre-season. And then when the first game of the season comes round, then you decide who your captain is. And that's given you, what, 2 months? And you figure out who it is. And your captain has to be a guy who's consistent, who's sensible, who's got a level head, who's the leader. You know, there's a lot of things that you need to be a captain, not just the best player. And so he has these 2 months to figure out who is the best captain. And it doesn't matter who was the captain previously, him going there, because that has nothing to do with Ten Hag. And that's why, in particular, he should have steered well clear of it, because he has to decide in this pre-season who he thinks his captain is.
Nathan?
I was going to say, so this conversation is now brought me back to a place where in my career, I think I probably had 13 managers. And for most of the ones that came in, they said, you know, this is a clean slate. What came before doesn't matter. But I'd like to know from sort of Craig and Stevie, do they even believe that? Like, we're talking about Maguire and if he's going to be the right captain for United going forward and alike. But is Ten Hag really going to only judge him on what he's seen in pre-season? Because surely, like, that can't be the case, because you must have seen United before you came. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, but the thing is, Nathan, when you're evaluating somebody, it's one thing to sit behind a TV screen and watch the football every weekend and then try and figure out about somebody. It's not until you're coaching them, when you're with them, when you're talking to them, when you see how they're interacting with people at the club and outside the club. It's the whole package. And until you figure out what this person's all about, that's when you can decide whether he's the captain or not. So yes, you know, he is walking into a clean slate because he doesn't know the players. He doesn't know the characters particularly. All he knows is what he sees on the football field from watching the television pretty much. So it is important that it is a clean slate and he decides on what he sees and his interactions with Harry Maguire or anybody else.
Are we putting... See, I got in quick there before somebody dropped the graphic. I'm on my toes now.
That's it.
I'm watching. Just waiting for that screen changing. The screen's in. At the end of the day, if he evaluated him, look, he would have watched Man United last year, but if he saw anything impressive from Harry Maguire, or quite a few others last year, and he's not the only one, I would be surprised.
Right.
So, you know, quite frankly, I think I'd be looking at getting almost a whole new back four in, rather than worrying about who's captain of my football club. I mean, things are just moving so slowly at United at the moment, it seems, which I would say is a little bit or a lot of a worry.
Meanwhile, Spurs have had quite a productive transfer window, haven't they, so far? They're in South Korea at the moment and being put through their paces and then some, according to reports. Antonio Conte, this was their third training session in just over 24 hours. At the end of it, he made them run 42 pitch lengths. Which saw a lot of the players collapsing on the side of the pitch from what we saw. Stevie, is this beneficial? What's Conte getting out of this, or what the players getting out of this?
Brain damage. That's what they're getting out of it. 3 times, I mean, this is mad. I'm sorry, this is madness. This 3 times a day nonsense and running 42 lengths of the pitch. At the end of the day, on your third, I'm sorry. There's one thing to get your players fit, but there's another thing to try and break them, because that kind of seems to me what's happening here. I don't understand that whatsoever. I never have understood it. There's 3 times a day, and this completely annihilating players.
But who
you don't have to do that.
But Stevie, who are we to argue when everybody does things differently? It worked at Juventus, it worked at Chelsea when he was there, it worked at Inter Milan, and certainly Tottenham have improved in his time there. They got in the top four, they were nowhere near getting in the top four. So, I mean, I get it, I would hate it if it was me and I was having to do the 42 lengths, and I used to hate that kind of stuff, but I mean, who are we to argue? He's had success. Well,
is it? I know he has, but I mean, we're always talking about the whole package here. It's not just about being 100% fit. You know, there's something to be said for playing for your manager and playing for the club and playing for your teammates and playing for there's all kinds of different ways of doing it. I get that. I suppose I'm coming from me. I would be talking to the managers, you know what I'm saying? What's good? I want to know how this is good for me. That you're running the guts out of me to the point where I'm lying on the ground, maybe spewing my ring up, and I feel as though I just want to go to sleep and never wake up. I'm sorry. Listen, there has to be a little bit of heart and soul involved in hard work. But just running the guts out of people, it seems like for the sake of it, because that's what it is to me. 42. I remember running the length of the field, and I can assure you, never once did we run it 42 times. And we didn't do too bad, by the way, winning the Champions League and the Premier League and all the other leagues and all the other cups, I should say. I guess there's a different way of doing it. I don't agree with it. I don't see the point of killing your players, basically, because that, to me, that's what it sounds like.
Nathan?
Yeah, I'm with Stevie on that, to be honest. And, for Conte, it has worked. We can see this type of thing that he did today. It's more sort of like it's a mental fitness challenge. It's almost like a clear vision for the players to know where the power is, and the power lies with Conte. And they would feel under so much pressure because they knew that if they didn't do the 42 or if they didn't do the 30 that was prescribed, then they'll be perceived as failures and they won't get the chance to play. And in some ways, I get that Conte wants those people to be able to run through a brick wall for each other this is how you have to be successful. But there are other ways to do it, especially when you look at the fact that, in some of the videos that you see, those last few laps, they're basically at walking pace. So how is that really going to transition towards playing like a really good high-intensity level of football? But as I say, for Conte, this is what he does. This is what he gets from his teams. But my only sort of bit of caution with this is that when I've seen managers in the past who come in with these big extremes, these big mental tests and so on, and they're clearly the number one, they're the most powerful person. When results don't go well on the field, all of a sudden those methods don't get looked at in the same way. People start to respect them less. And as a consequence, that sort of mutiny or rebellion is far greater than managers who, do things in a slightly different manner. Because when it is an extreme, before you know it, people start wondering what's the point. And I think for Spurs, fair play to them for crossing the line and doing it together and sticking together as a team. But in the grand scheme of things, is that going to be the defining factor in them being successful going forward? Who knows?
Well, he thinks it is. So, I mean, are we missing something here? We're not discussing a manager who's had no success running the guts out of the players. Now, is it the way Klopp does it and Guardiola? Is it the way, Ancelotti does it? No. And all these others? No. But we're judging a guy who has probably done this at most of the clubs, and guess what? He's had success. Now, if he's doing it and there's failure, then you've got to say, well, this is madness.
Right.
Clearly, he does not, and his fitness instructor, his fitness coaches, and the people that he's brought with him, and we always know he brings a big entourage, particularly when he was at Chelsea. I don't know how many he's got at Spurs. This has been proven for him to be successful. There's no argument with that. You can't argue that. He had it. I mean, Juventus were dominant. Chelsea won the league.
Nobody's arguing it.
Inter Milan. Well, you're saying it's madness. In his mind, it's not madness. It's been successful for him. Well, it's not madness for him.
Nobody said it didn't work. I'll tell you what he did. He took over Juventus, who were streets ahead of anybody else in Italy. They won 7 titles in the trot. And you can't tell me that was down to the pre-season and the training and running the guts out of them. They just had far better players. He comes to Chelsea, buys a load of good players, and then after a couple of years, the players got sick of him because of the way he was. But he did win the Premier League. But then he had great players, and
He
they went in
didn't
the
take over a
Champions League,
Juventus
so they
side
played
that was
Saturday to
successful.
Saturday. So you can't, it's not.
He didn't take over a Juventus. No, he didn't. He was.
To turn around and argue that the reason he's been successful is down to that wouldn't be an argument for me.
Well, no, it's part of it.
He's been successful because he knows about his tactics, and he knows his players and all that stuff.
Yeah, and he knows about
running
fitness.
the guts out of your players doesn't get you. What does that get you?
Well, it's got him success. It got him success in Italy with 2 different teams. It got him
because
some
he had the
success
best
at Chelsea.
players.
No,
Juventus were 7th before he took over.
You give me the best players. I'll tell you what, give me the best players.
Listen, when he took over Juventus, when he took over,
and put me in there, and I bet you I could probably win the Premier League.
Juventus, as Dan said, were 7th in the league. They had fallen off the rails when he took over at Juventus. He went back in there, he rebuilt them. He put some steel back into them. I don't always agree with his methods and how his teams play, but you cannot deny he's had success doing things his way.
I didn't deny that.
This is part of it.
I didn't deny that.
I don't understand what's madness then, because he's had success training his players this way.
Well, I'll tell you what's mad is go and get the stretchers and take the lads back to the hotel.
Well, what about the stretchers for the teams that he did it to and they won the leagues?
Somebody called 911. We had a fleet of ambulances to carry the players back to the hotel.
Well, I don't know how Juventus managed to have the success into Milan and Chelsea with this manager in charge, if that was the way players were feeling at the end of pre-season, because those clubs under Antonio Conte did pretty well.
Meanwhile, of course, changes afoot at Manchester City, Needham. Couple of points, Raheem Sterling going to Chelsea. Will they miss him?
I think they'll miss his experience, because with Haaland, with Alvarez, and to a certain extent with Calvin Phillips and the like, these are people who are good players with a really big upside, and they'll get better and the like. But for Sterling, he's tasted success for City. He's tasted those big games, those big occasions, and he's performed very well overall throughout his time at the club. So I think he will be missed from that standpoint. I don't think the last year or two have been the best 2 years he's had for the club, but he's still an integral part of that. There were plenty of games in those 2 years where he was leading the side out as captain as well, and you knew when he was playing, you kind of knew what to expect. So I think it's going to be a shame to see him not playing for City anymore, and it could be a big upside for Chelsea. Maybe it'll make them more competitive in the league as well. So to sell him to a rival, that isn't ideal, but this is a guy that deserves a chance to play in the Premier League because he's one of the best players within it. So I think he will be missed, but they are betting on the upside of those 2-3 players who they've signed so far this summer. And I think if they do hit on those, then you can see that the club will be evolving and getting better again. And if anyone can have the type of returns that he had through those years, then I guess it's going to be worth every penny.
How strange will it be in Needham going from the success that Manchester City have, kind of riding that wave, to Chelsea, where obviously the goalposts have changed slightly?
I think for him, it's just about trying to sort of leave your imprint within a side, and I think he's probably just looking forward to being one of the first names on the team sheet again, like he had a few years ago at City, to be the guy who is driving the team forward, helping them get the 3 points, scoring in big games, scoring big goals, and also for him, he's a West London boy, so being closer to where his home is. So I think, it's a different setup, different expectations and the like in this moment, but there's no reason why Chelsea can't be successful, when things settle down a little bit, because obviously last year, with the way things were with the ownership and the like and the injuries and people not performing, it wasn't a great position for them to be in. But now to be part of what could be a successful rebuild, and you being one of the first pieces of that, that's an exciting prospect. It's a different project to the City one where, it's a crisis if you don't win 4 or 5 games in a month. But for Chelsea, you can aspire to be that. And let's not mess around. 2 seasons ago, Chelsea won the Champions League. Start of last season, we believed that they'd be contenders for the Premier League. So it's not like they're striving for a mid-table finish. It's just that at this moment in time, their path to that success again is a bit more unclear due to the nature of the players that have left and the people who haven't come in quite yet.
Meanwhile, of course, another player could be following Sterling from City to Chelsea. Nathan Ake could be returning to Stamford Bridge. Reports of £50 million. City have won a watch if they can get that, surely.
Oh dear. Nathan Ake did very well for City in the last season, I think 2 seasons, forget how long he's been there for. But as is the case with a lot of players within that squad, they're all good enough to be able to play in the Premier League. but you can only pick 11, and it's a squad of 25, so you're leaving some real good players on the bench, and for them, they have
Pep was
aspirations
playing
to play.
Fernandinho as centre-back ahead of him, Nathan. Fernandinho couldn't... Stevie can run faster than him.
Context. No, that's not true. That's not true.
It is
but
true.
For context, anyway, that's not true. But Stevie can run faster than you as well. But anyway, for context, I think come the end of the season, Ake wasn't fully fit, so they were trying to protect him a little bit. So let's not try and put too much on that, Dan. Try and relax, mate. Try and relax. But I understand it. Like, for these guys, I think City have done quite well with this over recent years. If players are unhappy, then they're afforded the opportunity to leave. And if someone can hit that fee, then this is what will happen. And for Ake, if Chelsea want to pay 50 million for him, that's what it is. It's been a really... And, 50 million feels like a lot, but it's also a Dutch international. And he's a Dutch international who just won the league with Man City. And even though he didn't play the 60 games, he was still a part when he needed to be. And when he played in some of those games, he was a big deal. So it's a lot of money, but the price is the price. And hopefully for him, if he ends up going, he can play some more football and really establish himself back in the Premier League again.
Was he 25 million less, give or take, than Virgil van Dijk?
Well, we had...
I'm not to suggest that he's not a decent player, and he's been a pretty solid player for a long time, but, I know Chelsea needs centre-halves, but if it's the pond they're fishing in for third and fourth choice players at that price, that's kind of smacks of a little bit of desperation at the moment.
We'll of course be keeping an eye on that news as it develops. And just a reminder, if you haven't done so far, be sure to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plenty of content there for you over the summer. It is the biggest victory ever in the history of the Euros. It guarantees England a place in the knockout stages. And Nathan, what a big statement this is.
Yeah, it certainly was, especially coming on the heels of the France 5-1 yesterday, where they were 5-0 up at half-time against Italy. And I think in some ways, people would have been watching that. There are a lot of eyes on England when they are playing. The crowd was there as well. And I think for media and stuff, there's going to be such a nice feeling around the nation, because I think we saw England that first game against Austria, and at times, they didn't look anywhere near their best. They had a really good following, but they looked a bit nervous, a bit edgy. But then to be that score up at half-time, to finish the game 8-0, to be making history in the way that they did, credit to them. That's going to be such a big confidence boost. And now there's almost like a sense of expectation, but then also excitement. You've completed your sort of get out the group stage situation. You've got people who are scoring multiple goals. I think that's been a thing for England, especially when you want to compare it to the men's side. It's about the scoring goals, getting people on the edge of their seat, getting a nice atmosphere going. And I think ultimately today, Norway, from some of those goals, you can see how open they were, and they played into England's hands, because England was very much on the front foot, especially early in that game. And when that's the case and the crowd's really getting behind them, they're going to be a very, very tough team to beat. And that's a result that's going to be spoken about by all the teams, by everybody with their eyes on the tournament. And they're going to make a very, very tough game for whoever they meet. And it looks like it might be Germany or Spain in the quarters. But for England, why would they fear anybody when they know they've got the sort of firepower that they do have now? And as a consequence, if it goes into a shootout, in terms of who can score the most goals within the 90, being able to score 8 goals in a game is obviously a very, very strong feeling to have approaching the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, it is really quite impressive, especially when you take a look at how they broke the record. Previously, it was a 6-0 victory over Scotland, which was the largest margin of victory.
Where's Jan Fjortov? Where's Jan?
Yeah, Jan is very much in hiding. And let's get some more reaction, shall we, to that win with Kay and Emma.
Thanks, Dan. I'll tell you what, watching that with a world-class coach was a bit of a different experience, I'll say. But we must start, Emma Hayes, with England's performance tonight, 8-0 over Norway.
Yeah, we have to, because we can't spend any time talking about Norway. It was relentless from start to finish. We talked about the importance of the crowd, but I think the differences for England today is their intent going forward. I thought they played forward more often. I thought the way they utilised Beth Mead in particular was real standout from them, and the fact that so many players are scoring goals just showed their quality in the final third.
Because you just mentioned some of the goal scorers. I mean, that in itself is a chance for goal scorers to get some confidence, particularly a player like Ellen White.
She needed it. A number 9 who hasn't scored, question marks were being asked, the press were hounding her as they do, and I thought she managed that pressure really well, but that's what you expect for a record goal scorer, and I think she delivered with the types of finish, the one-touch finishes she's renowned for.
Alexis Nunes was at the stadium for us, and I wonder, Alexis, how long it actually took for you to hear the famous "Football's Coming Home" song, and what it was actually like to be there tonight.
Honestly, Kay, it did not take that long. It was actually being sung from very, very early, from before we even saw the first goal go in. But after the first 2 goals went in and then a third, let me tell you, it was definitely good. And I would say the belief that everyone kind of wanted back. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, but after the first match, yes, we know that England got the job done against Austria, but everyone kind of left feeling a bit unconvinced still. And you know how the English football public is over here. And after, I think, seeing some of England's closest rivals in the terms of Germany with such a convincing performance, probably one of the strongest performances I've seen so far of the Euros. You saw Spain without an Alexia Putellas absolutely dismantling Finland, and then you saw France as well running up the scoreline against Italy. And what we know of this England team under Sarina Wiegman is goals. Everyone keeps talking about how before this, in 14 matches, they've gone on and scored 84 goals. And against Austria, people wanted to see more of that, more so than the nerves. And even though they were able to pardon them, I think this is the England everybody was absolutely itching to see. They were absolutely ruthless. We know that, as Emma said, Norway didn't exactly help themselves at all defensively, but when they see that, you have to take advantage of it. We were wondering, I mean, the crowd started chanting, "We want 10, we want 10," and they got very, very close to it. But this was such a commanding message from England, and I think such a necessary, believe it or not, message after everybody saw what the other teams were doing so far this week.
Alexis, great stuff as always. We look forward to hearing more from you as the tournament rolls on. Let's just talk a little bit more about England then, because after that first game, there were many saying there could have been more goals. But yes, it was the opening game, but this now has to have filled them with so much confidence.
Yeah, I said pre-game I thought they would play a little more relaxed. I think the pressure of the first game was, unlike anything we'd experienced at home. So the second game was always going to be a little more free-flowing. But it's the fast starts that the team's making. I think scoring early, utilising the home advantage, I think is showing why they're one of the favourites. But Mead, I mean, what a player. She's really growing into the tournament. 4 goals already. I thought she was outstanding in everything she did today. And they're starting to gel as a team. The fact that she hasn't changed the 11, I think, has really helped.
All right, let's give it to Norway then, shall we? Because it's not just that they didn't score any goals, they didn't even have any shots on target.
That was as woeful a display as anyone has seen from Norway in the last 20 years. That was simply awful in every way. It was shambolic defending from front to back. Tactically, they got it wrong. I thought they left their fullbacks massively exposed, and England's wing play is exceptional, and it took 45 minutes for a tactical change to be made, which was far too late. And I thought that the players, it's going to be a long evening for them tonight, but they haven't covered themselves in glory.
They have not, but they do still have time to turn things around. They will be up against Austria in the last of the group games. In Group A, Austria were in action against Northern Ireland in the first game of the day. Both teams coming into this one knowing that they needed to get their first points on the board, both of them losing their opening games. 19th minute, it's Austria who go ahead. She's still with the opener.
Well, I think the fact that once again we're talking about an Austrian team with a clean sheet, conceded 1 goal, I think now they are favourites going into that last game on the basis of how well they defend, but took their finishes well.
Yeah, National with the second goal there. So I had to pause quickly there because we wanted to show you those celebrations.
I think that's when the Norwegian 8th goal went in.
The funny thing is it wasn't, obviously, as well. I know you joke there. That came after that game. Now they have the belief that they might just make the quarters. And after seeing that Norway performance, they've got to be instilled with further confidence.
No, Norway can't get any worse. They will get better. They're proud people, and I'm gutted for them. But they're going to have to take a long, hard look at themselves. They've got to do better.
So you think they're going to still do it? They're going to get the result they need against Austria?
I'm not so sure. Okay. I think it'd be a tight one.
Be a tight one, and there's more games rolling on tomorrow. We return to Group B. We've got Denmark taking on Finland. That's another 2 teams who didn't get any points in their opening game. And Germany against Spain. What a game that could be. Both of them scoring 4 goals in their respective openers. Make sure to join us tomorrow for both of those games. All coverage will be on ESPN2. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Kate. What a game Germany-Spain should be. We'll, of course, be looking back at that clash on the next edition of the show. Meanwhile, it's official, of course. The rumours have been doing the rounds over the last few days. But DC United have announced that Wayne Rooney will be their new coach, of course, returning to MLS after that stint at Derby as a manager. And, well, with this announcement, there's only really one man that we can invite into this discussion, and that is, of course, the man who went public when Rooney came into DC United. Initially said it was a massive mistake.
I thought a stray had walked into the studio here. By the way, that's my chair you're in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said at the end. I'll let you off with it just now.
It's like the World Cup. Every 4 years, I show up and humiliate myself here on our
go
desk
ahead.
talking about Wayne Rooney. What do you want to know? How I feel about it?
Where did this come about? I don't care how you feel about it.
I got to say, I'm shocked. I'm a little bit shocked DC United went down the Wayne Rooney road again. Just because, they gave him a contract the first time, he didn't fulfill it. Now you're giving that guy a contract for a bigger job, right? But I'm really shocked that Wayne Rooney took this job. I mean, he knows exactly what DC United is, right? He was there when they opened the stadium. He's going to go now and be back at that stadium 4 years later. There are still holes where the roof should be in that stadium. So you can't build a stadium. How are you going to give this guy a serviceable team? And if anybody should know how important that is, it's Wayne Rooney, right? He's just come from Derby County. He did a respectable job, I think you would say, but the people above him are incompetent. And so at the end of the day, he's doomed. I don't know that this is going to be any different for Wayne Rooney. Short term, I think we might see something like we saw in 2018, but long term, I'm worried for Wayne Rooney.
When he first arrived, you said that it was a mistake because he doesn't reach out to the DC United demographic. Will this change this time around?
People will be excited. I mean, they're instantly more relevant. Obviously, we're talking about it, but they're instantly going to be more relevant in DC. With his ties to the club now as a former player, I think it will speak a little bit to the fan base. Like, there's nobody that DC United could have gotten that would have been accessible to them that would have had a bigger name. I mean, that's just not realistic. So I think it'll be an exciting move for the fan base, but that's really based on like current standards. The guy in charge now is Chad Ashton. He's basically like the lifetime interim manager of DC United. They went down a road with Hernán Lozada. People were like, ooh, this team is going to be ambitious and different. That didn't work. They scrapped that experiment and they kind of went back to the old way. So I think this is a big move, and people in DC will say, well, they're swinging for the fences. If they hit a home run, great. If they strike out, at least they do so being relevant.
Are MLS teams wanting managers that can manage and make better teams, or people that fit a demographic? I don't quite understand.
So, I mean,
because if I'm supporting a team, whether I live in Washington or Seattle or Portland or Miami, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you look like. I don't care about your background. But what can you do for me now? Is that not a sensible way to look at it as a football supporter?
100%.
Can you make my team that I go to every other week or whatever it is successful?
Yes, better.
I'm not suggesting Wayne Rooney will. Is that not the most important thing that people have to worry about?
It is for fans, but I would push back and say that fans also want their teams to be relevant. They want their teams to be talked about on shows like this and other shows.
Well, that doesn't matter where your manager comes from or what.
So what are you saying, that DC United fans are going to look at Wayne Rooney and say he doesn't have a managerial resume?
I'm saying you talk about successful teams. Doesn't matter where your manager's from, doesn't matter about demographics, it's all about success.
MLS is a business as well, and you know that those things come into play. And I think for DC United, it's going to take a major, major investment for them to be competitive. I don't think they're willing to do that. I think you can do this, you can be relevant, and maybe you get a spark and you're in the playoffs, which is not some great achievement in MLS, but it's kind of the standard that DC United has set.
Are you surprised that he's gone? Given that his stock wasn't bad at all.
He must not have had very many other options.
I'm just talking to Craig.
I know.
He's excited. He's excited. We've let him out for a little while. He's excited. I never gave a thought to what Wayne Rooney would do next. There's a few people in England. I read some one or two quotes saying, Everton putting that together. 16-year-old coming in, or maybe even a 15, I can't remember, he was so young. And then he was this big thing, and of course that's his home club. Frank Lampard, saved them last year, and in essence they stayed up, but they were not great. Can he turn that around? And would he try for that kind of path? That's a big jump.
Right.
And I think that's far-reaching. But there was people putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5. I think there are others that thought, well, listen, Maybe he could have stayed at Derby. They go to League One. They put the best team and the best squad, even with all the administration in that division. Maybe that would have been a better option for him to go into League One and try and come back up and build his stock. So I don't really know how all this MLS stuff works, clearly, and I've never had that. So I don't know what he's walking into. You know what he's walking into more than me.
I would have thought that Everton.
That's Stevie.
Everton's miles ahead of any job in MLS, right? But even anything in the Championship, even League One, is miles ahead of DC United specifically. So if he's taking this job, it makes me think maybe there weren't the options that I would have thought he would have earned from the work at Derby County.
That's it then. That brings us to the end of today's show. Be sure to stay tuned though. Nadim and Stevie are back. Craig, of course, with us as well to answer your questions on Extra Time. Welcome in then to the latest edition of Extra Time. Thank you as always for your tweets.
Well, we've been waiting. Those pair have been out doing 42 lanes of
42 lanes to the football pitch, as Antonio Conte had the Spurs players doing. How many could you do nowadays, Nathan?
Stevie was running up and down going, oh, we didn't do this in our day.
We won Champions Leagues and we never ran.
No, with that, I get what Stevie's saying, because at the end of the day, like, it's more than fitness, because if they did 40, does that mean they're not going to finish in the top 4? Like, why is 42 the number?
42.
It's a mental thing. Yeah, it has to be 42. That's what you need to win a league, apparently.
Stevie, what do you, before we get to the question, what do you think about Rooney going to DC United?
Dan, I said the other day on the show that unless he's given a barrel load of money, he's off his rocker.
Oh.
Because he's got players that he's going to have players in his squad that shouldn't be professionals, shouldn't be being paid to be called professionals. And if he's going to have to use them, he's going to figure out really quickly that no matter how many times he tells them something, no matter how many times he shows them how to do it, when the game starts, it goes straight through there and flies all the way out of there. And there's nothing you can do about it. Unless they spend money and get him some proper players to coach, then he's going to be fed up. He'll end up chucking it.
What are you doing?
Doing my 42. I'm doing my 42, boys. Keep going.
Nah, he's not right today.
I'm doing my 42, 41, 39, 40.
Nadim, is there any good way of a manager? Is there any good way of a manager telling you that you're not part of his plans next season? What are some of the most bizarre ways that some players found out they were on the way out?
That is a very, very good question. And I think there are good ways. And this story, so I played with Patrick Vieira for 1 year. And he mentioned with Mourinho, when he was, I think, Inter Milan with him, Mourinho told him at the start of the season that he wasn't going to be part of his plans going forward. But he wants him to hang around in pre-season, work hard, and who knows, maybe things could change. Come the start of that season, somebody got injured and Patrick Vieira was playing week in, week out. But then the other side of that coin is something which happened to me. So it was the Saturday before pre-season started on the Monday, and I got a text to say, don't come in on the Monday, come in on the following Saturday. So initially I thought, we've extended the off-season, everything's great. So then text my teammates, and then it said, yeah, we're training Monday, and then we're flying away to America on Friday, and then that's when I'm coming in, and I'm training with the academy. So yeah, there are two different ways to do it, and for me, the best way is to just appreciate, like, even if you don't want to play somebody, they're still probably better than the under-18 who you're going to promote to be basically filling a spot within a squad. So I think for me, the best way is just to say to them, maybe the future isn't right for you, but stay here, work hard, and who knows what could happen.
How did you deal with it, Stevie?
I actually dealt with it because players who I figured weren't going to be good enough, I always set them a task. If you think you're going to get in this team, this is what you need to do. And I didn't set them a task knowing that 1,000%. I didn't set them a task that I knew they would never do. I was realistic, and I was trying to be nice about it. And I said, right, if you can do this and this and this, then you know what? I'll consider you for the first team.
What sort of task, Stevie?
When it comes to the end of the season,
what was it? Clean his car, get his beers.
It's just simple things. First touch, position, and you can pull up anything you want. When you're dealing with a guy who's not very good, there's 1,000 things you can pick on. But so what? The outshot of that is, come the end of the season, when they're coming in and asking you about whether they're coming back or not, you go, oh, listen, do you remember at the start of the year I asked you to do this, this and this? Did you do, can you do it? And they say no, and you go, well, at the end of the day, we're going to have to move on. And so you do it in a nice way. You set them a task, and if they don't do it, they can't argue with you when they haven't done it. Simple.
Craig, how do you rate Notts Forest transfer window so far?
Nottingham Forest.
With more to come, apparently. Are they staying up this season?
Unlikely. I don't know who they signed. They lost the goalkeeper. They signed Dean Henderson from United. I think that might be a loan, but I might be
right.
I don't know. They've signed the young boy Nico Williams from Liverpool.
Okay.
I haven't really.
Oh.
My grandson.
I thought you were a big Notts Forest fan.
Well, I am, but the season hasn't started yet.
Right.
I just wait the day before, have a look. Bash, bosh.
Ready to go.
So I don't know exactly who they've signed, but it's going to be very difficult for all the teams.
A lot of German defenders, a lot of defenders from the Bundesliga, apparently.
Who's their agent, Derek? Derek Ray. Sort this out.
To all, including Captain Smarty Pants, start, sell, bench. Stevie against Craig in a heated argument in Scottish. Stevie at it with Dan, or a mad and rude Gab Marcotti. I like it when Gab interrupts quite a lot, as if he's going to say something interesting, and it doesn't always materialise that way. How do you find doing the...
It's Gab's face, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's Gab's face. Gab makes faces and looks away.
It must be easy, though, to do the Gab and Jules podcast when you kind of step in to replace Jules sometimes, Nathan, because you just sit there, don't really have to do anything and take the money.
Not necessarily true. But in fairness to Gab, he watches a lot of football, like an extreme amount of football, so he does have that knowledge base. But I always find on this show, the biggest weakness he has, and I don't know if it's changed recently, it's just the massive delay from his feed to like when the show's actually going on. So sometimes you can see he wants to make like a really big point, but it was valid 5 seconds ago, but he's still trying to drive it home. So for me, I love seeing a frustrated Gab try and make a point that everyone else has moved on from. So I'm definitely buying that. And I do quite enjoy Stevie and Craig, so I think I'm going to have that in second.
Yeah, I like it when you two shout at each other.
There's a couple of ones that have done the rounds.
That's great. That's quite enjoyable.
Stayed
yes, indeed, the test of time.
Stayed the test of time. It might have been
when you went to Stevie. I think that one certainly stands out.
I may have called him stupid one day on air when he was shouting at me. It was Liverpool when he was talking about what team they were going to play. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do.
And we had a bit of a discussion.
I remember it well.
We had a bit of a discussion.
It wasn't a discussion. You were talking nonsense. You were trying.
You were trying enough of that today. I tell you what, you've won the gold medal and talking absolute
You were trying to
dribble
convince
today.
me that Jurgen Klopp, who had gone on vacation on the third round of the FA Cup, was all of a sudden going to play the first team in the fourth round.
Goodness me, this is going back.
That was exactly it.
No. I never said first team. I said a hybrid. So memory goes when you get a bit older.
Nathan, you've played with both Taarabt and Balotelli. What were they lacking to make full use of their potential?
I think with Adel Taarabt, you see him today, and he's a defensive midfielder for Benfica. How did that ever happen? I think Adel had incredible talent, but he didn't have the desire, and he was very much just like a massive fish in a small pond. And I think he ultimately acted like that at the time. So I think he needed to be in the sort of environment that he's in now in Portugal, where everybody works hard. The standard is the standard. You get in early, you work hard, you do extra. So I think he was lacking that in that moment. And for Mario, again, his talent was supreme. But interestingly, he's coming from Italian culture where, you have to run 42 lengths to win a title. So you would think he'd be more disciplined, but ultimately he really wasn't in that time. And I think in some ways, he was just mentally a lot younger than, say, a lot of the people who were around him. So he stuck out like a sore thumb. I think at times he was away from home and needed help, and he didn't quite have that. But I suppose the positive in this story is, again, he's in a better place now mentally, and he's playing some really good football. So I think in that time, you just probably needed to really take a look at the people around him and try and be more like they were, because there were some exceptional professionals there at the time. And if he would have been anywhere near that, I think he would have stayed for longer and had a greater legacy in the Premier League.
Final question, Stevie. Who's the best fullback in the Premier League? Cancelo, Alexander-Arnold, Robertson or James?
Ooh, dear. That's a tough one. Robertson, Alexander-Arnold, James and Cancelo. Well, you got Cancelo and Alexander-Arnold that can't defend properly. James has gotten better defensively. And you got Robbo, who's a way better defender than the others, but he's
Where's he looking?
Probably his delivery isn't quite as good as the others. That's a tough one because that's a tough one.
I'll answer it.
I don't actually think you can turn round and say. I think it would depend. It would have to depend on how the team was set up. If you were to set up a team of all stars, let's say, and say, right, we're playing the way Liverpool do, then you'd have to play Trent and right back. If you're saying we're going to play 3-5-2, you'd probably play James. If you're going to play the way City play, then you would play Cancelo, because you wouldn't. I would think Cancelo would be better in City's team than any of the other ones. Ooh, I'm sorry, I can't come up with a real answer.
I would say, to me, these are all great players. The best fullback in the Premier League,
yeah,
with a bit of everything, when fully fit, is not on that list.
Who would you go for?
Kyle Walker.
Really?
Who's that?
When fully fit.
Right.
When fully fit. He hasn't got the...
No.
Well, he's been good enough for Man City for quite a few years. I mean, he's not the most... He hasn't got...
Craig, his delivery... His final delivery is not as good as any of the others.
He hasn't got the delivery of Alexander-Arnold and the others, but then he's stronger defensively and quicker. That's just who I'd go for. If you asked me to pick a full-back today, I'd go for Walker.
You go Walker over everyone.
Just with his experience and his pace and how his game... And again, he's a much better player when fully fit today, even though he's getting a bit older, than he was when he left Tottenham.
Okay.
Much better. I mean, he's not... Yes, his pace gets him out of some bad starting positions, but hey, it gets him out of some bad starting positions. I just think he's a really, really good fullback.
Who's your vote for, Nathan?
So I'll go with Reece James, and I think it's because he's got a little bit of all those guys who we've named so far. I think he's got that sort of engine like Robertson. He's got a little bit of the Cancelo type quality, and for Trent as well, his delivery can be very, very good. And I've seen him play in some big games and go 1v1 with people and really, really stop them. So I think there's a reason why you're hearing maybe he's been linked to City and this type of stuff. But I think I really like him. I think he's probably the best, although the other ones are pretty spectacular to say the least as well.
Good stuff, guys. As always, thank you very much. ESPN FC will be back on your screens tomorrow. Be sure to join us. You've got to do more. You only did.
No, I did. I finished on 39.
You did.
Stevie said I was running my guts out. And 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 my guts out.